All right, Chof Hey, first day Chanukah. We always begin by saying Gadol Torah. It's a Maimer Chazal. Gadol Torah, greatest Torah. Shemebi Refu L'Kol Chai, that it brings healing. Torah brings healing to all living things. Who needs a Refuah Shlema?
Yehudis Golda Bas Eliza Hana Haim Yaakov Zev ben Sarah Yosef Yitzhak ben Lior Shoshana Bas Hana Gary Roberts son of George Yaakov Shaul ben Hana Miriam Yehudit Gila Bas Rachalea Yair Chaim HaKohen ben Sarah Esther.
Refuah Shlema B'Korev. Who else?
Yaakov ben Malkaperel.
Refuah Shlema B'Korev. Tuvia ben Avram. Yisrael ben Yomin ben Leah Gittel. Devor Leah bas Rusa Huva Liba. Refuah Shlema. Okay, as long as we start with Hayom Yom, the 25th. So, my father, the Frierdiker Rebbe, tells us that his father, the Rebbe Rashab, would kindle Hanukkah lights between Mincha and Ma'ariv. He was not particular whether the doorway was south, north, or east, or west, right? The mitzvah of Hanukkah lights is to shine from the inside out to illuminate the world. But he wasn't particular which way. And then Hanoda Salalo, he said, after kindling all the lights, he would sit near the lights for a half hour, except Fridays. When he did not stay that long, he took care that the lights burned at least 50 minutes. So the order that we follow is first Mincha, then Hanukkah lights, then Shabbos candles. Okay, just a second here. Okay. Lesson of Tanya, starting a new chapter, chapter 3, which, if you're using this small lessons in Tanya, is on page 64. And in the edition, the Hebrew, the classic, Likutei Amorim, it's on page Zion, Perek Gimel. Okay, I mean, just a brief introduction here. Yesterday, we introduced the notion that, or emphasized the notion, which I had said from the start of this, that this is a self-help book, a book to bring a person to wholeness, wholeness being ultimately a whole and continual relationship with Hashem, which is and who is the source of our life. And we talked a little bit briefly outside about any state of disconnect with that wholeness produces negative symptoms, manifest in the small world, which is a human being, in things like anger, depression, and worse, right? States of mind, states of soul, which are all symptoms of disconnect between us and the source of our life. And so yesterday we introduced the idea that we would like to do, as we're learning this, especially since a bunch of new people have come on, is as we go to document the steps that the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, is giving us, the steps, the instruction set, let's say, that the Alter Rebbe has given us to create a state of wholeness. And Elisheva Kirschenbaum, formerly Kirschenbaum, put it as given us a Google space, which is in, it was posted yesterday. And all of us and anybody can post there, and I would encourage us to post there, so we could come away from this with a really a list of things, and maybe, God willing, we would publish this in terms of a simple explanation of step by step of how the Tanya guides us to become Beinanim. So, he's now going to elaborate further. This whole idea, by the way, is that I've just put on the table, is taken from the frontispiece of Likutei Amorim, in which he says that what the Rebbe is doing here, he says, I'm quoting now the Alter Rebbe, Levar Heitev, what my purpose is, the Alter Rebbe says, is to explain well Eichu Korev Ma'oy, how it is that it's very close to a person to achieve this wholeness and this continual relationship with the source of life. And he explains it, Bederech Arucha V'Katsora. He's giving us a derech. He's giving us a pathway to come from the outside in, to become out, to start with whatever space we call ourselves outside, to get deeper, closer, which is to become a Beinoni. That's the purpose of the book. Okay, with that said, all these levels, all these categories and levels, from the three levels, we're talking here now about the levels of the soul, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. And we said, sidetrack yesterday, a little brief, the reason we're not mentioning Chayin Yechida is because he's talking about the three levels of the soul which are really invested in us, the others being more transcendent. That word itself needs explanation, but we won't go there at the moment. We have three levels of the nefesh. Nefesh is the animus, right? We explained that the nefesh achiyunis, the enlivening soul, which in a Jew comes from klippus noiga, and therefore has possibilities of transcendence, illumination, luminosity, and ruach and neshama. So these three levels of the soul, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, kalula ma'eser bechinus. If you take these three levels of the soul together, they contain 10 categories, keneged eser sephiros elyonos, which we have not. This is the first mention we have of 10 spheros. So I'm not going to give a long drasha on this. I mean, this needs to be explained, particularly if you haven't come across this before. But let's just say it very simply. There are 10 modalities that Hashem uses. These are the 10 utterances of creation. And those modalities are called spheros. As the Zohar says, the spheros are used to create the worlds. They are reflected in us in 10 powers. We have exactly 10 powers reflecting his 10 spheros, which is one of the perushim of being, one of the explanations of the fact that when you hear it said that we're created in the image of God. God's image projects itself into creation through the 10 spheros, and godliness projects itself in us through the 10 powers. So these are the Eser spheros, the supernal spheros, and these 10 spheros, nistal shalumahen, there is chained down from them. That's a literal translation of chains, histalshalos. And there is from these 10 spheros, there is chained down from them a nechelchos l'shtayim, and what's chained down from them is the 10 powers that we have, and they're divided generally into two groups. These 10 spheros, Chabad, Chochmah Bin Hadas, and then Chesed through Malchus, 7. So these three Chesed, Chochmah Bin Hadas, are called Sholesh Amos. They're called the three mothers because they give birth to the 7 offspring. The 7 kafulas, and the offspring of 7 kafulas, they're called 7 double ones because they come in pairs. Chesed, Gevurah, Netzach, Netzach and Hoid, etc. They're paired, and they're paired in opposites. So we have 3 mothers, Chabad, and 7 double ones, Chesed through Malchus. So Pirish, now he breaks them up. The 3 mothers that give birth to, and it's interesting, Steinsaltz in his, I forget the name of his collection, but he says very important, the Chabad doesn't create the midos. The midos are very deeply rooted in the soul, but it infuses the midos with godly life, with godly chayas. So we'll take the first group, the first 3, Chochmah Bin Vadas. And then the Shevet Yemei Habinyan, these are the 7 days of building, right? The 7 days of creation, right? From Sunday through Shabbos. Chesed, Gevurah, Teferes, etc. If you count them, Chesed, Gevurah, Teferes, Netzach, Yosoit, and Malchus, you get 7. And similarly, in the soul of a person, Shenechlekes l'shtayim, So it's also, we have this structure. We have Sechel, that's Chabad, Umidos, which is Chesed through Malchus. Now, HaSeichel is Kodel Chochma Bin Adas. He says it now explicitly, Chochma Bin Adas, which I'm going to put something on the table here. Seichel. It's often translated as intellect, but it's, and it's fine, but it's much broader than it. It's mindfulness, it's consciousness, it's the cognitive power, it's cognition. That's the word that actually Steinsaltz is cognition. But cognition has to do with recognition. And recognition is not just intellectual, but recognition of that which comes before. Chochma, I think he'll say this in this chapter, I'm not sure, is broken into two words, koyach ma. Chochma, you just flip the two first letters around, koyach ma, the power of what? Meaning the power to feel, experience that which is beyond rational, beyond the supra-rational. So it's not just the rational, when we say seichel, it includes all of that, the whole realm of rational consciousness, pre-consciousness, and unconsciousness. All are included in that box, which is called seichel throughout Hasidus. And that's because Chochmah particularly has the link into the ineffable. So Chabad Seichel includes Chochmah Bina V'das. The Hamidas Heina Avos Hashem, and Midas start with love of Hashem. These are the holy Midos. And we talked earlier, and when we talked about the Nefesh Bahamis of the non-Jew versus the Jew, that that all of if it's love can be directed in holy way or in unholy. But we're talking here about now the godly soul. So these are the midas of love of Hashem, and the fear of Hashem and the awe of Hashem, and the beautification of Hashem. Chabad, back to Chabad, Nikra Imois, Chabad is called mothers, and it's the source of the midos. And again, it's not the source of their being, it's the source of their enlivenment. It breathes life and living into them. Ki hamidos hein toildas Chabad, because the midos are offspring of Chabad. So if the Chabad is the mother, the midos is the small child, the offspring, the birth. What's birth? Okay, ubir ha'inyan. And by the way, if you do want to comment in between or question, just raise your hand. That's why I look up here occasionally to see if anybody's signaling anything. Okay, ubir ha'inyan. To explain this, because kihine haseichel shebenefesh hamaskelas, the seichel in the intellectual soul, and just a very short diversion here. The Alter Rebbe tells us there are shtei nefoshes, two nefoshes, and he introduces, and this is maybe one of the only or more, very few, where he mentions a nefesh hamaskelas. And there's a lot of discussion in Hasidus as to whether this is the intellectual aspect of the godly soul or whether it's a soul in itself. And the conclusion, as far as I've learned in Hasidus, is that really there is this other soul, but it belongs mainly to the godly because it's the cognition of Elokus, and that's what he's speaking, and because that's how he's addressing here, the cognition of Elokus, which is the seichel capability to relate to Elokus, to godliness. So the seichel shebenefesh hamaskelas, the seichel of the intellectual soul, hamaskil, which is hamaskelas, hamaskil, shehu hamaskil kol davar, which has cognition of, recognition of, awareness of all things, is nikr b'shem chochma. That's the starting point, chochma. And here he does, right? He does break it into two, and it's very important to take a look at this. Koyach ma, right? Just you take the two letters of the chochma, of the first, reverse it, and you ma. The power of what? When the power of chochma comes from potential into actuality. When is that? In other words, Chokhmah is kind of a potential, a koyach, a potential, because it contains within it the awareness of that which is, I use the word ineffable, whatever that means, which is beyond putting in a box, which is beyond articulation. We have it, and this is really the ultimate, the key to the path, the derech that he's expressing, is to work on oneself in such a way that one lives with the ineffable, with the experience of that which is beyond intellectualization, right? But so that's the power, that's the koyach, that's the potential that Chokhmah brings into the scene of the human Jewish configuration of 10 powers. To bring the power potentiality into actuality, to koichoi el hapoel. And where does it come actualized? That we're able to actually deal with it in ways which are, not just godly but human. When we can now bring it into bina, and we bring that koyach ma, the power of the ineffable, into some level of understanding. Now, it's not going to be the same, of course. It loses that. What's the word I'm looking for? I was going to say poetic. It loses that some sense of its melody, some sense of its ineffability, but it's meant and designed also to come into understanding. So Chabad, right? So you have Chokhmah becomes joined with, often, even though we call here today the whole structure Chabad mothers, in other contexts, Chokhmah is the father, and Bina is the mother, and that's a relationship, an intimate relationship, which gives rise to the offspring, which is Das. So the capability comes from I'll just use this word because it's simple, the ineffable into the more understandable, by unifying with Bina in one's intellect, in one's mind. The Havin Davar La'ashure, to understand something straight. And to deepen oneself. This is the faculty of Bina, to deepen oneself into a concept or a supra-rational expression coming into the rational. So it becomes as a davar chachma, hamuskal b'sichvai, as it becomes graspable, understandable in one's intellect. And when chachma, the koyach ma, the power of what, which is beyond understanding, when some of that becomes infused into bina, into understanding, that's nikra bina. That's called bina. Oh, here he says, chachma is the father and bina is the mother. And they, Maledes Avos Hashem, they give rise to the midos, which start with, of course, with chesed and yirasoi and awe, upachtoi and dread, fear of Hashem, love of Hashem. And he will explain as we go on, how to understand the one that everyone really usually has a problem with is fear. Chesed is lovely, and nobody has problems with that. But what does it mean to be afraid of Hashem, or have dread of Hashem, or awe of Hashem? These words are explained later in Tanya. And that's today's Tanya. Short. By the way, tomorrow, Friday, our custom here is we do Friday and Shabbos on Friday, so here for a little bit lengthier tomorrow. Okay. Comments, questions? Nobody? I mean, really, if there's anything that's hanging, let's get it out there. Okay, then we proceed, before we end, to the title of this. Sarah.
Yes, Sarah Lipka.
Sarah Lipka, good.
Yes, please. I'm using the lessons in Tanya. I also have all the Miller, but it's better to use lessons in Tanya.
No, you whatever you want. And I hold up Lessons in Tanya because a lot of people use it, right? You can follow Lessons in Tanya is fine.
Uh-huh.
But I'm just, as long as you have something in front of you where you can follow the text.
Right, right.
So, okay.
So this is better than Miller, though. I mean,
is it better than Miller? Is that what you asked?
Yes, I don't think that's the right word. Is this maybe easier for me than Miller?
I don't know because I don't know you, which is easier. But I will say, Lessons in Tanya is authoritative.
Yeah.
Meaning, it really is. It's the English is the translation of a explanation of the Tanya, which was done in Yiddish or maybe Hebrew. I'm not sure, and which has been that translation by Rabbi Yosef Weinberg, Oliver Shalom, was looked over by the Rebbe. So it has a certain authoritativeness to it.
This is the first one I ever saw some years ago, but I've never been able to understand it very much, although I did understand.
Okay, but as I say, as long as you have one that gives a translation, Chaim Miller does this, translation, and he, of course, adds his own Pirush, But if you can focus on the whichever is easier for you or anybody here to focus on the Hebrew-English translation, that's really what you need to have in front of you.
Well, I thank you very much. I'm glad to have joined this. It's amazing.
Okay.
You have a good day.
No, well, you can't leave yet. You have one more thing. So what? It's called Daily Tanya, so what? Meaning, what's our takeaway?
Aha.
What's our takeaway? Now, you're open mic, but you don't have to be the one who answers unless you want to. Anyone else raise their hand? Sylvia, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't actually raise my hand.
No, but you opened your mic.
I did unmute myself. I did unmute myself because I was thinking that as many times as I have gone through this, what strikes me over here in the description of Chachma and Bina is the emphasis and the explanation of what he means by this process of going from a Chachma and expanding to Bina and the Hisbonenus. And that's not doing chitas and saying, oh, yeah, that's interesting. That's really a process that we don't necessarily give ourselves the time for. And I'm just wondering if anybody does that these days. This is really intense. We don't realize it.
Yes, people do it these days. I'm not naming names, but yes, people do it. I mean, you want to know? This is crazy. I'm saying, you want to know something? One of the reasons I like teaching this is because I have to really do some of that before I can come to the table. And sometimes, I mean, since I've been doing this class, my experience of Tanya is a whole lot, whatever you want to say, than it was when I was doing Kitas by myself. And I think people and I think it's one of the reasons people like and need a class, because you take a time in your day, every day, to do some pondering, at least this half hour. So you're doing it. If not,
excuse me, can you say what lines you're referring to?
When? No, I'm not referring right now to anyone.
What she's saying now about Hisbonenus, something she's talking about contemplating.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm actually referring to the in-between explanation that's found in the Lessons in Tanya, which I was just referring to. That there is extensive commentary in this, especially right here in this chapter, that explains what's going on here. So if you'd like to read it, it does take it a little further than the text.
Okay. No, this is just, it sounds like it's more of what you're saying. I was listening to something else last night, and the piece we're missing, and I think this is what you're talking about, the contemplation and the real Hisbonenus about the message in Tanya, like really internalizing it.
Yes, that's and one of the reasons that I would like and hope that we could do this little exercise of accumulating all the teachings that he gives us one by one. You know, everyone, this is something, I mean, I'm going to go into a big tangent here, but there are lots of people who have bemoaned and tried to put together, and some more successfully than others, what is his hisbonenus? What is the hisbonenus alpi Tanya, alpi Chassidus? And what I'm saying is that hisbonenus is outlined very clearly in the Tanya itself. But we just have to take note of it, number one. That would be the list, and then exercise and use those notes as exercises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you.
So this is our takeaway, right? You guys have told me that our takeaway is to learn with the objective. I think you're saying this. Learn with the objective of learning what and how to misblainen, so that we can become bainanim.
To misbonya? What
Right?
does that mean?
What does what mean?
Did you say misbonya? So
his boniness. That's the word for meditation.
Oh.
That our objective here is to learn what and how to meditate. People guys like that word, how to meditate. Well, the secret in meditation is bina. The word is at root bina. What does it really mean to comprehend? I'll give you one clue. I mean, this is I'm not playing games here. An often cited saying from the Zohar, often cited in Hasidus, is the following. I'll say it in Hebrew and then I'll translate. Bina liba. Bina, which is understanding, is the heart. And it brings the heart to understand. When you have a heartfelt, when you can do the exercises that are here on these pages in the Tanya, and bring it and utilize them to awaken your heart to service of Hashem, which, by the way, service of Hashem is a big thing. It isn't just that I'm doing the mitzvahs. It's I'm doing these mitzvahs with my heart connected to my mind, both of which are connected with my body, and all of that, my holistic self, is drawn into and taking the path, derech harucha v'katzora, taking the path, walking the walk to a deeper relationship with Hashem. That's the purpose of hisbonenus or meditation.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
So you're saying till you feel it in your body, literally.
Oh.
You got it.
Yeah.
Bina liba. That's the big deal. Bina is not just mind. Bina liba. Bina is connected with the heart, and understanding Bina brings the heart to understand.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll get more into this as we go.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Okay. Be well, everyone. Anybody else before we go? Okay. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
And a happy Chanukah.
Happy Hanukkah to you too.